Black woman CEO told to wait outside. 1 minute later, she fired the entire management. It was an ordinary day for Diana Malone, the newly appointed CEO of a high-profile tech company in Silicon Valley. Her rise to power had been swift, and while some of her colleagues admired her, others weren't as welcoming. Diana, a woman of exceptional intellect, grit, and a sense of fairness, had shattered many glass ceilings along the way. Despite her achievements, there were still those who doubted her capabilities simply because she was a black woman in a male-dominated industry. Her decision to take over as CEO of Technova had not been an easy one, but she knew it was time to make a change. Technova, once a thriving leader in software development, had become stagnant. The company's values and work culture had become toxic, and Diana had one mission: to bring change, restore fairness, and push the company to innovate again. However, when Diana entered the company's headquarters that morning, she was met with something entirely unexpected: a decision made by the management team without her input. She had scheduled a high-stakes meeting to discuss her vision for the future, but the board members seemed uninterested in listening to her. They had already made up their minds that a change of leadership was unnecessary, and that they would continue business as usual. In their eyes, Diana was an outsider who didn't belong at the table, and they would remind her of that every chance they got. Walking into the boardroom, she was met with uncomfortable stares, and the tension in the air was palpable. Diana knew she had to remain calm. She had dealt with much worse than this, but she had no idea that today would be the day when everything would change. Diana sat at the head of the table, her presence commanding attention. She had worked her entire life to be here, and she wasn't going to let anyone push her aside. The room was filled with a mix of men and women, all of whom had been with Technova for years. They were mostly white, and their attitude toward her was unmistakable: distant and dismissive. "Thank you for joining, Diana," said Greg Vicu, his voice dripping with condescension. "I'm sure you've heard about the changes we've discussed among the management. As you know, our company is in a bit of a transition, and we believe your role will be more about maintaining current operations rather than making any significant changes." Diana nodded calmly, her mind already racing. She had anticipated this. She had prepared for this moment for months. She took a deep breath and spoke, her voice steady but firm. "I'm not here to maintain the status quo. I'm here to transform this company, and I expect everyone in this room to be on board with that. This company needs to adapt or risk becoming irrelevant," she said, meeting each person's gaze. There was a long silence. Then, Greg leaned back in his chair and looked at Diana with an air of superiority. "Diana, with all due respect, you're new here. We've been running things for years, and we've seen the challenges before. We understand the company better than anyone else. You need to trust us to handle the vision." Diana's eyes narrowed, her frustration simmering under the surface. "Trust you," she repeated, her voice low but filled with a quiet intensity. "I'm here to lead this company forward, not to manage your egos. If you think that your way of doing things is the best, then perhaps this is where our paths diverge." Greg looked at his colleagues, a knowing smile on his face. He had expected this reaction. It was exactly the kind of challenge he had anticipated. But he was wrong. He hadn't accounted for the fact that Diana wasn't going to back down. "I think it's time for a break," Greg said dismissively, signaling for Diana to leave. "We'll let you know when we're ready to move forward." The words stung, but Diana refused to let them rattle her. Instead of reacting angrily, she stood up slowly and turned to leave. But as she reached the door, she stopped. She felt a rush of emotion, a mixture of anger and resolve, flooding through her. This was the moment she had been preparing for her entire career. Without turning around, Diana spoke, her words cutting through the room like a sharp blade. "I've been listening to you all talk, and I realize that I'm not going to be the one to wait outside. You are." The room fell silent as everyone stared at her, unsure of how to respond. Diana turned on her heel, facing the door again, but this time with a new sense of purpose. 1 minute, that's all it took. Diana walked out of the boardroom, her steps confident, her heart pounding in her chest. She made her way to her office, where her assistant, Carla, looked up with a smile. "Is everything okay, Diana?" Diana paused, taking a deep breath. It will be inside her office. She sat at her desk, gathering her thoughts. She needed to act fast. The old guard needed to go. It was time to clean house. Diana knew that the road ahead was going to be difficult, but she was prepared for it. "Carla, I need you to gather all the relevant files," Diana said, her tone serious. "I'm going to call a meeting with the HR team. We need to start making some very important decisions." As Carla began to work, Diana glanced at her phone. She dialed the number of her most trusted advisor, Thomas, who had been with her since the beginning of her journey at Technova. "Thomas," Diana said when he answered, "I need you to start making arrangements. The entire management team is being fired today. We can't move forward with these people holding us back. It's time for a change." Thomas paused on the other end of the line, stunned. "Are you sure about this?" "I've never been more certain in my life," Diana replied. "This is what needs to happen." Minutes later, the HR team was in her office. Along with Carla, the meeting was swift, and within an hour, Diana had initiated the process of letting the entire management team go. It was a bold move, but Diana knew it was the right one. The future of Technova depended on it. As word spread, the office was filled with whispers and rumors. Some employees were shocked, while others couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. The toxic culture that had plagued the company for so long was finally being uprooted. Diana was taking control, and the shift was palpable. The former management team was escorted out of the building, their faces a mixture of disbelief and frustration. They had underestimated Diana, and now they were paying the price. Diana watched them leave, but there was no satisfaction in her eyes. This wasn't about revenge. It was about creating something better, something that would allow the company and its employees to thrive. In the days that followed, Diana worked tirelessly to bring in new leadership. She brought in diverse voices, each with a unique perspective, and she emphasized the importance of collaboration and respect. Slowly but surely, the company began to change. The atmosphere was lighter, more energized, and full of possibility. Diana's leadership was transformative. She proved that kindness, integrity, and a willingness to stand up for what's right could drive real change. The company flourished under her guidance, and employees found themselves more motivated than ever before. They knew that Diana wasn't just a CEO. She was a leader who truly cared about them and their future. The press took notice of her bold move, and the story of her decision to fire the management team went viral. People from all over the world celebrated Diana's bravery, her vision, and her unwavering commitment to building a better company culture. She had not only saved Technova but had also set a new standard for leadership in corporate America. Years later, Diana's name was synonymous with empowerment and change. She had become a trailblazer for women of color in leadership roles, and her story inspired countless others to pursue their dreams, no matter the obstacles. But Diana never forgot that one crucial moment, the moment when she chose to walk out of that room and fire the entire management team. It wasn't just a turning point for Technova, it was a turning point in her own life, one that would shape the future of the company and the lives of everyone in it. And it all started with the simple decision to stand up, not just for herself, but for everyone who believed in the power of kindness, fairness, and a new kind of leadership.